Can we hold, because we got to be fair in our assessment of who gets in right now. Stuart?
Okay. Now you're thinking, here's a guy from the testing company. So we do large-scale assessment, statewide assessments, and you're thinking, is this going to be a point-counterpoint or a disagreement with all these folks? And the answer is absolutely not. So I hope you're not disappointed. This isn't a debate here. I agree with an awful lot of what I've heard, in fact, probably all of it. My background is curriculum and instruction. But I am the founding principal of a large-scale testing company. The high point of my career was late 80s and the early 90s, when we were involved in performance assessment in multiple states, portfolio assessments in many states. Did we do everything right as well as it could be? No, but we learned a heck of a lot of lessons, and we know how to do it well now. And yet, that movement, they call it the authentic assessment era, it ended. Yeah, I'll talk a little bit about that in a minute. But in any case, what I'd like to start with, I'll just mention there is a handout, and I didn't use a PowerPoint. I have this handout that has my picture on every page, and that was just so you know me the next time you see me. But actually, I've been writing about these topics for a long time, and so these are little one-pagers that maybe someday will be useful to you. But a lot of the points I'll make today are in those documents. But I want to talk a little bit about where testing is now and has been for the last few years, and some issues with that. And focus a little bit on what tests are testing, what they should be testing, and so on. Then I'm going to spend a good bit of time on performance assessment. There was one in there. I've got to quote you here, or quote myself here. Excuse me. I started one that said this: "Let's replace our current accountability assessment with a single, summative, formative, adaptive, diagnostic, general achievement test that measures growth and yields immediate results teachers can use right away to modify their instruction." I wrote that facetiously. After that, I saw an awful lot of requests for proposals coming from states that sounded an awful lot like that. And I'm going to pick up on one point in there, but a test cannot do everything. And when it comes to accountability assessments, I believe a statewide assessment can provide useful information. Now, there's a question of what level and what grain size and all of that, and that's where I'll depart from what's happening nowadays in the past few years, because I don't think we've done that well at all. I will say, though, that back in that period I loved, in the late 80s and early 90s, testing companies were doing portfolios and performance assessments. What happened? Well, there are a variety of things that happened. There's cost issues. There were other problems at the time, and there's also something called No Child Left Behind I'll talk about in a minute. But anyway, So I think you got to ask the question: what should a test or what should a measure, an instrument, cover? If you want to know if a student is college and career ready, and what would you expect to measure if you want to know that a school program is performing effectively, and what would you want to measure if you want to know if a teacher is performing effectively? And I'm just talking about the broadly what you might want to measure, not just student achievement there, and basically. That quote I gave you kind of got at something that has bothered me for years, and I've had to keep my mouth shut about it because in recent years things have gone the other way, and I'm the head of a testing company. And for me to say that what all you states are asking for is baloney would put my company out of business. So I've had to be a little quieter about it, and I don't know if this is going to get me in trouble or not today. But anyway, the business about an accountability assessment, a statewide assessment, providing teachers with information they can use tomorrow in the classroom. I got a real problem with that. Okay? I mean, when we talked about what you should be measuring if you want to know if your program is effective and others are effective, you're not going to be measuring a specific topic and only one specific topic that's being taught the next day or was taught the previous day. You're going to want to have a broader coverage of something. I'm being general now, talking about the content as well as skills, broader, higher order skills, lower order skills, whatever. And so to me, that was a real problem, and yet we've moved more and more in the direction of these immediate results. What does how did immediate results get translated? Multiple choice, more multiple choice. And of course, the publishers are all very willing to help with that. So we've provided item banks and online tools that allow teachers to, or allow the teachers to access tests that they might create themselves, but they want immediate results that day, the next day. Okay, and so what happens? They're all multiple choice, and that we know from research back 20 years ago. In a high-stakes environment, reliance on all multiple-choice items has a negative impact on instruction. What's that impact? Well, they're going to be teaching in a way that leads to being able to answer those kinds of questions, number one. Number two, what do the teachers' tests look like? Well, I just described what we've done there. The teachers' tests are going to look like the tests that they're being held accountable for. And so we have, I think students nowadays I think teachers nowadays are seeing a lot less student work than they did years ago. You've got to see student work. And I'm talking about work on performance tasks. I'm even talking about work on maybe shorter-term constructed response questions, that take 10 or 15 minutes. You can do a lot with those kinds of questions, too. But the point is, you got to see student work. And knowing that a kid got a 6 on a quiz, and that's what gets in the grade book, by the way. Oh, by the way, these systems, these tests are scored instantly by the computer, and those grades get in the grade book, the electronic grade books automatically too. And a parent comes in and says, "How's my student doing?" "Well, I got a 6 on this. I think the kid needs tutoring." "Oh, what's the problem my child's having?" "I don't know. That's why you got to have tutoring, because I'm too busy doing testing all the time." So it's a nightmare out there, and yet we've caused that to happen, and how we turn that around, it was a great question to start this session. So in any case, there's an example. We just can't expect to measure what we need for different purposes and to serve all purposes, and it can't. And I think you're hearing now Mark Tucker, Bob Lynn. Mark Tucker from the National Center for the Economy, I guess, and Bob Lynn is a retired psychometrician, both saying, and I wish I could remember the document, I saw it just a couple weeks ago, both saying we shouldn't be testing every grade, and maybe we can even not test all students, do matrix sampling. And I agree with that completely. The psychometricians got us in trouble a few years ago saying when we were tested in isolated grades, 3 grade levels, well, your results are going to vary from one year to the next, because you're just testing these isolated grades. And the point they were making was you need to, when you're looking at school performance, you got to look at patterns of results over time. And their argument was you should be looking at these results over time. Well, what was the answer or the result of that criticism was, well, another solution is to test every grade. Then you're not worried about that variation from one year to the next because you've tested a bigger sample of students and across all the grades. Well, so we got ourselves in trouble there, and that's problematic. I knew a state program years ago that was 100% matrix sampling, meaning the students in 2 hours could take 4 subject area tests. There were no student level results, mind you, but all students were tested. All students were tested, and they didn't take a full test. That's matrix sampling. There were like 15 to 20 different forms at each of the 3 grade levels, and the students took maybe 15 to 20 multiple choice questions. But what else did they have time to take? Some extended constructed response questions also. And so that allowed us to produce very, very reliable results at the school level. So if you want to rank order schools, who wants to do that? That's a problem anyway, but we'll put that one off till later in the conversation. But so you could measure more important and more valued skills and still do it very efficiently. And so why is it from the federal level that we're directed to test every student in every grade every year? That's just crazy. So if you want to work on changing something, that's certainly something that we have to deal with. I might add that the state did then change to high stakes testing, all students producing student level results, meaning hours and hours of testing, and less reliance on the non-multiple choice formats. I would argue that in either case, if you looked at the performance, if you wanted to look at the relative performance of schools, a rank ordering, so to speak, you would get the same result, either approach. So if you look at the efficient matrix sample rank ordering of schools from that testing program to the next year's rank ordering of the schools based on testing every student for hours, producing student level results, you'd get the same rank ordering. You get the same results. It can be high quality.
Excuse me, could you take the conversation outside, please? Could you take the, it's interfering with the broadcast. Thank you.
Okay, I want to move on to performance assessment now. And everybody talks about when they talk about performance assessment, the first example you hear people come up with is airline pilot tests or something, and getting a license to fly a plane. And I'm saying let's bring it down to earth and talk about the driver's test. Okay, the driver's test has two components. One component, multiple choice. Now, would you give a license to anybody who could pass a 10-item multiple choice test? I don't think anybody would do that. Then there's the performance component. What is the goal? What is the goal of that whole process? What do you want out on the road? People who can drive safely. Drive safely means applying the rules of the road, knowing about right-of-ways and signs and signals and stopping distances and all of that. Those are the things you want people to know, yes. But do you stop there with them knowing it, or do you want to know if they can apply them? And to me, that captures what this whole issue is in terms of what we value. And some might even argue that at the highest level, meaning the federal or state level, that the focus should be on what the ultimate goal is of instruction. Why should we get bogged down in whether students can add 2 digits plus 3 digits with and without regrouping in that kind of test? Shouldn't that be left to the local schools to see that the kids have the skills, and not stop there, to see that they're able to apply them? And what's our goal in education? I think it's whether they can apply these things in real situations. So that's my take on the driver's test. Performance assessment. I mentioned that a lot of states were doing performance assessment on a large scale years ago. We didn't do it very well. There were several reasons, several issues. Some were technical issues. There were issues with the scoring. We wanted to reduce scores of all this work. Let me take writing assessment as an example. We would give kids 10 multiple choice items, asking them to fix a grammatical error in a sentence, and give them 10 points. And then we'd have them write an essay, pre-writing, drafting, revising for 2 hours, and score it 1 to 6. Okay, well, you've lost information there. You've got so much more evidence. So in terms of this technical side of things, it relates to reliability too. You got to have your scoring and your points somehow related to the amount of evidence you have. I don't think those 10 multiple choice questions should count as much as 2 hours of work with tons of evidence in the essay a student produces. So that was one of the issues. There's the alignment issues, that there was no, we put these items, the multiple choice items, through all kinds of reviews and vetting process. We check for differential item functioning. We check point by serials. We have committees judge that these are relevant to what they're teaching, and so on and so forth. But we didn't do anything with the performance tasks the kids were taking back in those days. That was a problem. So there's an alignment and quality of the test. Misperceptions galore about performance assessment. Not reliable. Baloney. Okay? We often try to compare a 50-item multiple choice with a single performance task. Why would we do that? I can tell you now that I mentioned a 50-item multiple choice test because that's the length of a multiple choice test you would need. We got to assume we're sampling from the domain effectively and all of that, but that's the length of a test you would need to produce a reliability coefficient that we would find acceptable. Okay, if you're talking about 4-point extended constructed response questions, you could do it with 8 to 12 of those questions. Now, costs a lot to score them, takes more time, all of that, but you can do a lot with those kinds of questions, and a lot of those questions I think can be part of more broader, I hate to call them tasks. I think they're performance modules or whatever that include scorable products that could be essays, other kinds of demonstrations, and so on. But the point is, you'd have to compare not one task to a 50-item test. If you go on a constructed response, I'm saying you need 8 to 12. If you're talking performance tests, there's research from the early 90s that says, with writing tests, for example, to get an acceptable level of reliability, you probably need 3 tasks, okay, extended, essays to get a reasonable amount of reliability. And so, again, it's ridiculous to say one thing is more reliable than another. It depends on how much of a measure you have there. And by the way, human scoring, that's the other issue. Well, I'm sorry, but I'm talking about results that involved human scoring. And there's just not an issue there. If a scorer makes an error and gives a kid 3 points when the kid should have gotten 4 points, that's still more than half credit. That's still a lot more than you know from a student who gets a 0 or 1 on a multiple choice item. And so those errors in scoring, they work out fine. By the way, multiple choice has error galore. That's why you need 50 items. Why do you only need 12 or 8 or 10 or 12 of this kind to get the same reliability you get with 50 multiple choice? Item per item, there's no comparison. Okay? And you go even further when you're talking performance tests that involve a lot more evidence than a constructed response question. So anyway, that whole reliability thing is a myth. The error in multiple choice, 20% of the kids who pick a response, correct or incorrect, are giving it for a reason you don't know. There's a lot of talk about, what do they call it, distractor analysis. That the kids who picked this option in mathematics made this mistake. Well, that a bunch of them did maybe, but a bunch of them didn't. A bunch of them didn't come up with the right answer and had to pick an answer. And maybe they did half guessing. Maybe they could eliminate some responses, whatever it might be. But isn't that equivalent to a scoring error? The kid guesses right and gets a point. That to me is the same as a scoring error. So again, this whole business of reliability is just a lot of misunderstanding about assessment literacy. The state consortia now out there, their assessments will clearly be better than many states' assessments. I didn't say all, I said many. I'm willing to give some states that. But at the same time, they're still timed, on-demand tests. So when you look at what the nature of those tests is going to be, they're going to be tests that can be taken in hour and a half, 2 hours, 2.5 something. Performance tasks that they're going to be talking about are still on-demand controlled situation. So you're talking about maybe 2 class periods to read several passages and write an essay. Okay? Well, it used to be with a writing prompt without having to read the 2 passages and understand it, that we had the 2 class periods to draft and revise and all of that. So, which direction are we moving there? My point is, there'll be some good activities, some good tasks, but they're still in that mindset of very tightly controlled situation. So where am I personally on that? I do believe curriculum-embedded performance assessment can contribute to accountability decisions. Okay? I'm not saying you couldn't have other components, but I think whatever other components there are should be efficient. I think testing at selected grades, why not? Let's go back to the grade 4 and 8. Those were endpoints in the instructional sequences, So you want to know where people are there. As to how they get there, let's leave a little flexibility there, okay? You can still require that. And you can do it more efficiently, whether it's some multiple choice, some constructed response. But I do believe curriculum-embedded performance assessment, as long as we're talking high-quality performance. And I think in terms of not performance tasks, but performance, a set of performance activities. So I think of a performance assessment as what different states are doing, a few different states, and obviously what Ann's group is doing. But the state of Ohio has a dyad system where there are instructional modules. And within those instructional models, the kids at different points in time are generating work that can be evaluated for a variety of reasons. Some for formative reasons. Different tasks might be there for more summative reasons. Formative reasons, maybe they've changed their their work. They revise it, they improve it, and so on. Some of the reasons, maybe you got to count it without having that opportunity. Others would argue both ways on that. So my point is, I do believe that with auditing, and I think there are efficient ways to audit student work. We've got distributed scoring. We've got electronic portfolios. Seems to me through a sampling process, we can do some kind of auditing to audit the scoring of the work, even though it might be locally scored. So basically, that's my take on where we should be heading, was less testing. I'm fine with some components being efficient, but you got to get real performance at work in there. And by the way, if it's curriculum embedded, and these are high-quality things, tasks and activities and modules that the folks are using, you're talking about good instruction as well. So, thank you.
Let's thank the panel, please.